I don't know how much more clearly I can put just how much 2020 felt like Groundhog's Day for the Chicago Bears. It's the same sad, pathetic story year after year after year. More often than not great enough to truly be a contender, not nearly shitty enough to get themselves into a top pick position to get the quarterback that could truly change the franchise, just middle of the packsies. Somewhere between 6-10 to 10-6. Typical bullshit. And heading into this 2020 season, I was really afraid of the no-win nightmare scenario. And the no-win nightmare scenario ended up exactly playing out. Maybe not the way that I initially thought or envisioned, as this team, to be fair, did win a couple more games than I predicted them to, but the end result was basically the same fucking thing. Like, from Jump Street, that opening game against Detroit, they should have lost that game. And Bears fans wanted to sit there and pinch themselves and be all delirious because the Bears beat the crappy Lions, who are led by a horrible head coach and a just as bad, ineffective general manager. And even with all of that, even with the big fourth quarter comeback where you're sitting there saying, oh, Mitch has figured it out. He ain't figured out shit, you idiots. It was still a DeAndre Swift drop touchdown pass away from the Bears starting 0-1. And then week 2, they struggled to hold off the Giants when they had lost Saquon Barkley to a season-ending injury early in the game. And then let's not forget the classic that was the Atlanta game where they're down, 26-10. And then all of a sudden it's Nick Foles time, and Nick Foles is going to make all the difference in the world. And they come back and win that game because, again, you were facing another head coach and general manager-led organization where those guys are going to be fired during the season because they didn't know how to hold on to frickin' leads. And lo and behold, what do you know? The Bears get to a point in time in the season where they're frickin' 5-1. And predictably and pathetically, the pattern of behavior I would expect from the marks of the midway that buy into the mediocrity of the McCaskey way seeps in. And it's pervasive and it's nonstop. It's, oh my God, they're 5-1. Look what they could do. And you got people thinking that they're a real contender. You got people thinking that Nick Foles is going to lead them somewhere. You got people thinking that they're a threat to Green Bay and all this other dumb crap that wasn't true. So they immediately go out, and you have 4 games still to buy. There was that tough 3-game stretch where I pointed to it. I'm like, this is the one that's make or break time. And, of course, they lost all 3 of those games. Then you had the Monday night game against Minnesota right before the bye. And you're sitting there and thinking, okay, well, Kirk Cousins can't play well on primetime, all the while forgetting that Nagy and Trubisky also suck in primetime. Or in this case, apparently Nagy's suck carries over to Foles because, lo and behold, wouldn't you know, they ended up looking like shit on prime time. So you go into the bye week, a 5-1 team all of a sudden is 5-5. And then proceeds to come out of the bye and lose more games. Lose more games. And you're sitting there at 5-7. And now all of a sudden, I'm sitting there and I'm saying, no, this is perfect. Lose them all, Chicago. Lose them all. We're this close to the whole-scale house cleaning that needs to happen. This close to the change that is needed. We are this close to wiping the slate clean and starting over. It is better to do that than to continue in your perpetual cycle of mediocrity. But of course, the way the schedule broke out, you get to face a depleted Houston Texans team. You get to face a Minnesota Vikings team also with a depleted defense. You get to face a team in the Jacksonville Jaguars that clearly were in the tank and did everything they could, even in the game against the Bears, to ensure their rightful place at the number 1 pick in the draft. But all of a sudden, the Bears win those 3 games, and they're scoring some points, and Mitch is putting up numbers, I guess. And Bears fans think that this offense has figured it out, and they're really clicking. Now, mind you, we're apparently totally forgetting about the wipeout on the Sunday night coming out of the bye to the Packers, like, what the hell does that mean? Or the game against Detroit where you sit there and fucking lose a game that you should have won. It's revenge for the week one, abortion. And you sit there now and all of a sudden they're 8-7. And now you got these dummies on Twitter and social media and on their websites and on their blogs talking about how the Bears are turning it around, that this offense has figured it out, totally missing the fact that Detroit had already fired their head coach and their defense stunk. Houston already fired their coach, their defense stunk. Minnesota, defense stunk. Jacksonville, we're going to go on to fire their head coach. Defense stunk, clearly tanking. Like, buying into this bullshit of these 4 straight performances against some of the worst defenses in the league, all of a sudden we're an indication that the Bears offense had magically figured it out. So now you're setting up the ultimate nightmare scenario. It's week 17, Bears, Packers. Bears win, for sure, they're in the playoffs. But even if they lose, if the Cardinals lose, they're in the playoffs. Now, of course, the Bears being the Bears, Aaron Rodgers is their daddy. They go out there, they try to play chicken shit ball because Nagy knows the truth that he's an idiot and Trubisky sucks, so he's got to sit there and minimize the potential risk there. But eventually it's going to catch up with you, and you end up losing going away. But still, while the Packers kicked your ass again, are able to backslide into the playoffs at 8-8. The ultimate nightmare scenario. The true standard and epitome of mediocrity, 8-8, but to get rewarded with a 7th seed in the playoffs. So now you got to sit there and go down to New Orleans and play. Whoopee! And of course, what did the Bears do? Sure, it doesn't help when Javon Wims drops an easy touchdown. Doesn't help. But all that did was accelerate the inevitable. The Bears' offense stunk. It took it to the last play of the game for them to put up more than 3 points. A meaningless garbage time Jimmy Graham touchdown catch because, how appropriate is that? Trubisky lives for trash time. We're going to call him Trash Time Trubisky. And the Bears lose. I know Mitch felt like a winner, I'm sure, because he was the MVP and everything. But the true nightmare scenario played out. The Bears were 8-8. Yet they got rewarded only because the league expanded the playoffs from 6 to 7 teams in each conference by backsliding into the 7th spot. Therefore, McCaskey, Ted Phillips, saw just enough, didn't want to eat the financial L at the end of a COVID-impacted season where you didn't have fans that you could draw a bunch of money from. And here we are. Now the Bears are sitting there going into 2021, going into this offseason, the subject of all types of quarterback rumors, because now you've let potentially a lame duck general manager and a lame duck head coach that don't deserve to still be there, because you're rewarding mediocrity, all because of communication and collaboration. That's important. Gosh. Instead of, wins and divisional titles and playoff wins and championship appearances and championships, things that real deal legit organizations, championship organizations actually give a shit about. No, it's communication and collaboration. Yuck, and consistency. So now, we go into this offseason. Pathetic Pace and Numbskull Nagy are going to be desperate. Desperate leads to dumb, which is why you've heard the Bears involved in the Derek Carr trade rumors, the Carson Wentz trade rumors. Probably not the end of the trade rumors. You're going to hear about them. Before that, it was Matthew Stafford, because they're desperate for a quarterback. Never mind the fact that the same guy that signed Mike Glennon, the same guy that traded up, panicked to draft the wrong quarterback, who then a couple of years later was going to fix it by trading for somebody else's mistake in free agency and Nick Foles. Now you're giving him yet another chance to get the quarterback position right, because that's going to go well. We've seen desperate lead to really dumb in the past with the Chicago Bears when it comes to this organization, because quarterback was, and always has been their number one need going back decades. Every year it's their number one need because they never seem to fucking have one. which is what leads you to the dumb dick Jay Cutler deal and 8 years wasted with the Jay Cutler experience. The 97 offseason, before that 97 draft, trading away a first-round pick for Rick Meyer. Let's get somebody else's garbage and try to reclaim it like we know what the hell we're doing. And it's still the number one need for this team going into the offseason, which is the biggest concern of all. Because they're either going to trade the farm to get somebody else's veteran or somebody else's downtrodden or average quarterback and hoping they can get more out of them, or settling, because that's what the Bears love to do with that mediocrity of the McCaskey way mindset, is love settling. And they're going to sit there and potentially damn this organization for years with a really dumb move that gives up a ton of draft pick capital, or assigning themselves or connecting themselves to a quarterback that's not going to be good enough to get the job done. It'd be one thing if this team was a quarterback away, but I assure you, if you watch this team this year and you thought they were just a quarterback away, you were in clown school. I promise you that. You've got problems on the defense, and Chuck Pagano retired. Yeah, he retired. And you know what's bad? Like, you should read the tea leaves here a little bit. Like, Jay Rodgers, a lot of people was assuming was going to step up, the defensive line coach, and become the next defensive coordinator. And instead, he went to the Rams to be the coordinator there. That tells you all you need to know. Nobody wants to come there or stay there because they know Nagy's an idiot, and they know this is a lame duck situation that they don't want any part of. And newsflash, the schedule doesn't look a whole lot better this upcoming year. So when you look at the offseason, you say, okay, well, then maybe you can get really aggressive. Well, how aggressive can you really be? You can call the salary cap fugazi, all the fucksies you want sees. But the reality is the Bears don't have a ton of cap space. They're going to have to make some changes. They're going to have to make some moves. When you look at the overall organizational philosophy, when you look at the top 5 players in terms of salary cap investment on this team as it stands right now, because A-Rob's a free agent, it's all on the defensive side of the ball. Whereas the Super Bowl champion Tampa Bay Buccaneers, 4 of their 5 highest cap hits in 2021 are on offense, and 5 of their top 6 overall. One of them, of course, being the quarterback, Tom Brady. You see the problem with this picture? It's a misallocation of resources that has put us in a spot where this team doesn't have financial flexibility. They also don't have draft pick capital because Ryan Pace doesn't know what the hell he's doing when it comes to running a draft room and running a draft board and being able to sit tight and wait for guys to come to him. He's always got to panic move and go up the board. At some point in time, those chickens come home to fucking roost. And oh yeah, by the way, all the while, you still have holes on this roster on both sides of the ball, most notably of which is still the goddamn quarterback. And that's not all. Certainly could use at least one receiver, even if you retain Robinson. Robinson and Mooney's a nice one too, but especially if you don't retain Allen Robinson, like if you don't tag him or don't work out a long-term deal, you're going to need a couple of wide receivers. Even if you bring back Tariq Cohen, I still think you need a better speed complement to David Montgomery, but if you don't get one until day 3, so be it. But you certainly need to invest in the offensive line at the tackle position. I would say multiple guys, because it'd be not sure as hell nice to move on from Charles Leno this offseason and potentially Bobby Massey as well. And you look at this team and you say, okay, that's it? No. Even then it's not it. They can still use more depth in their secondary. I still argue they need better depth in terms of their edge rushers. It's just a mess. There's no reason for optimism. There is no reason for hope. There is no reason for you to get your tits all hard, giddy as a schoolgirl. Because the only thing that could happen this season, in this offseason, are things that end up screwing up the Bears long term. Because if Pace and Nagy end up making a big move off the draft board to go draft a quarterback, they probably get extensions, and that's the last thing any sensible Bears fan should fucking want. Or they're giving up the farm in this draft and the next draft to go get a freaking quarterback that somebody else doesn't want anymore. And instead of asking the operative question, well, why the hell, at the most important position in the game, if this team doesn't want this quarterback anymore, why the hell would they be trading him? Why the hell should we be trading for them? They will go ahead and do it. Something bad is going to happen. Of course, Bears fans wanted to celebrate the mediocrity, but there's a price to pay. And you're going to pay the price, and you're going to pay the price potentially for many years to come. So I hope you enjoyed that meaningless, stupid-ass wildcard game appearance where you got embarrassed to be a fan of that shit show and that offense on national television, because it's all downhill from here.